Hello everyone, in this video I want to show you how to set up a cross-account SNS to SQS subscription. So we are going to be using a SQS queue as a subscriber here, but this will apply for if you're using a Lambda function or any other type of subscriber to your SNS topic. And generally there's two ways to do this. There's what I would consider to be a bad way, and then there's a good way. So the bad way is this first one here, and this one involves the sender, which is the SNS topic, or sometimes also called the publisher. The sender subscribes the receiver, which in this case is the SQS queue. So this is not a good way of doing things, especially with SQS, because it requires the receiver to confirm the subscription. And the way the receiver has to confirm the subscription is a message gets sent to the receiver's queue. The person that owns the queue needs to open the message and click a URL, which will confirm the subscription. So this is a really, really bad way of doing things. In addition, if for whatever reason you accidentally delete this queue, then you need to go and contact the sender again to resubscribe you to the new queue that you create to replace it, which can be an issue if you don't own the SNS topic. So this is the bad way. You should avoid this at all costs. Now the good way, which is what I'm going to show you how to do in this video, is when the receiver, which is the SQS queue, subscribes itself to the sender. And the way this one works is that the sender just basically gives the receiver the permission to subscribe. So this is a lot easier. Using this method, the receiver can subscribe itself. It could also unsubscribe itself if you give it that permission as well. And generally, this is just a better way in terms of separation of concerns as well. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So I have two windows open here. On the left-hand side, I have the sender, which is our SNS topic. And on the right-hand side here, I have the receiver, and this is the queue, which is going to receive the messages. You can also see that these are two completely separate AWS accounts. This one starts with 7553, and this one over here starts with 3984. So these are indeed cross-account resources that we are going to be connecting here. Okay, so the way to get started with this is that we need to go to the sender and go to the topic and edit the access policy of our SNS topic. And it's very easy to do that. You just go to, well, you click on the SNS topic. I'm already in it. And then you go to access policy. If you're creating your topic for the first time, you can also do this during creation. But if you go to this, we can actually just view it. So this is what it looks like by default. And by the way, this SNS topic is default, and this queue over here is also default, no special setup at all. So it comes with this pre-established policy here that basically gives me, the account owner, the permission to do all these different things up here. But anyways, if you want to edit that access policy, you need to go and click on edit under the topic. And then when you're there, you want to expand out the access policy here. By the way, the preferred way is probably to do this through infrastructure as code using CDK or CloudFormation or anything like that. But this is just how to do it through the console. And what we want to do here is we want to add a different statement here. So if you take a look at the structure here, we have a statement list. So we want to add a second JSON object here in the statement list. So let's find the end here. So we need a comma right here. And then I'm just going to paste in this policy, this statement that we need to attach to this SNS topic. So this is what it is here. So we have an effect allow, then the principal is the key is AWS, and then we need to put in the subscriber account ID. Now the subscriber is our SQS queue, which is over here. So we can just grab the account ID right there, and let's just swap this out really quick while we're here. And then the action is SNS subscribe. And then the resource is our SNS topic. So the region, the account ID, which is this account ID, and the topic name. So let's fill all this stuff in. So the region that I am in is US East 1. So I'm going to put in US East 1. I need to put in the publisher account ID, which I have over here just off camera. Let me just put that in as well. And then we need the topic name, which I believe in this case, yeah, it's just sender. So let's put in the topic name here as sender. And this should be pretty much good to go. So yeah, just confirm that's set up correctly. Now we're going to go to save changes here. If there's a formatting error, you should see a warning pops up, but you see that ours was successful. So now we can go ahead and go to our receiver, which is our queue, and just attempt to subscribe ourselves to the sender. Now, before we do that, I just want to grab the ARN of our SNS topic, which is called sender in this case. And then when we are in our queue, which is called receiver, we're going to go to the SNS subscription section here, and we're going to say subscribe to an Amazon SNS topic. We're going to go to enter an Amazon SNS topic ARN, and then we're just going to paste in that ARN and go ahead and click on save. And you can see here that we subscribed successfully to the topic and everything seems to have been set up correctly. So let's test this out really quick. I'm going to go to our queue over on the right and I'm going to start polling for messages. So I'm going to go to send and receive and I'm going to go to where it says poll for messages. All right, going to switch over to the other tab, which is the SNS topic. Going to click on publish message. We're going to say hello sender as the subject, and we just need to put something in the body. You can put whatever you want in there. And when I click publish, we should see something over here on the right populate because we are polling for messages right now. So let's try it. And there you go. As soon as I clicked it, we see that we received the message on the other side, and the message will contain the correct payload as well. So hello sender in this case. I'll leave a link to that policy statement down in the description section. If you enjoyed this video, thanks so much for watching. Check out these other ones on the right on SNS and SQS.